social action is active on climate change at the level of discourse, at the level of advocacy, and also research. We are engaged in mobilizing people through education, creating awareness, and there are different levels of our work. In the first part, we work at the mitigation side. I explained earlier that Nigeria, is particularly the Niger Delta area, is a source of petroleum resources, and petroleum is the main contributor to greenhouse gases, and so there's a need to address the issue of extraction and the dangers of extraction, locally and in terms of the global impact through climate change. There's something that we have been dealing with in the past over a decade now, and that is at the level of discourses, searching for solutions. We are part of the discussion about what solutions, what mitigation ideas really work. And we are an organization that works at the grassroots. We work with the people that are affected by climate change, and we work with people in the communities that are affected by fossil fuel production. So we understand, we're able to, through that interaction with the communities that work, we understand what works and what doesn't work. And so we're seeing, over the past decade, from the Kyoto Protocol up to the Paris Accord, that there is this attempt to promote certain so-called market mechanisms, including the marketization of carbon. There's a carbon trading mechanism, which, whereby in some cases, companies and countries in the global north can be said to have offset their emissions if they invest in ventures in the south that reduce emission. And so one of those schemes, the Clean Development Mechanism, which has been ongoing since the Kyoto Protocol, attempts to include the reduction of gas flaring as one of those projects. So a company like Total or Shell could claim carbon credits if they can, present some paperwork to show that, okay, we have reduced gas flaring in the Niger Delta, and so we should get some credits for reducing CO2. But there's something problematic about this. In the first place, gas flaring in the Niger Delta is an illegal activity. According to Nigerian laws, it's illegal, and so every company that has been flaring gas has been paying a penalty according to law. And so if this is a problem that you created in the first place, a company that has created a problem and this is a problem that has been polluting communities for decades. And because there's now a market for carbon, the same company now claims that, okay, we're going to reduce the problem we are causing, but we're going to get money for it. We're going to get carbon credits for it, and all of that stuff.
They're even thanked for
it. And so what one of the things that we try to do is to, through research, by focusing on particular projects, particular cases, we try to show, and to contribute to the global advocacy, so the world will understand that this kind of approaches does not work. It is a fraudulent, approach. It does not contribute to reducing any emissions, and even the claims that the companies make are mostly unverifiable. If you look at the numbers, they are, bare, like total falsehood presented at that level. Another example is in the area of forest. Forest serving as sinks, for carbon. And so there is, there's the RED Plus scheme, the reducing emissions from forest degradation and deforestation. And so under this scheme, certain forest areas could be identified as a red forest. And if the promoters the red forests can claim that, okay, we have kept this forest undisturbed to act as sink, and then we can get carbon credit, we can get some payments and so forth. That is another bogus idea in many respects, but fundamentally, not bogus in the sense that in some cases you find a situation where there are existing protected areas that are being promoted as carbon credit projects. So what is there? There's no additionality. There's nothing new. This forest is already protected, so you're not doing anything new to address that. That's one. But also, even more fundamentally, is the fact that there is now an ongoing land grab. And that communities that depend on their forests for livelihood, communities that have a right to farm and feed their communities and their families, are being deprived of livelihood because corporate interests in alignment with certain governments taking over lands and taking over forests for so-called rent schemes. So there's a new colonization of forests and communities in the name of mitigating climate change. And these are some of the false solutions that doesn't solve the problem, but exacerbates and intensifies the colonial relations and the marginalization of communities that we've had in the past decades. So we as an organization, we're engaged in research. We're working with communities to advance the view of communities. So we have now communities that are affected by fossil fuel exploitation, over the decades. But we now also have communities that are affected by climate, mitigation projects. It is not necessarily there are rent victim communities, CDM victim communities, and so these are some of the things that we're dealing. That's at the mitigation side. But there's also work that we do at the adaptation side. That is, for example, in northern Nigeria, in northwest Nigeria. What are we talking about when it comes to adaptation? I explained earlier that climate change is contributing to causing conflict situation. And so there has to be, part of what we do is to create the awareness that, look, there are historical problems here that is causing this conflict. Ethnic difference is one of them. Religious difference is one of them, because most of these conflicts are painted as Muslim versus Christian conflicts, and we cannot deny that there are elements of that in those conflicts. We don't deny. No,
it's a very complex situation.
It's a complex situation. There is an admixture of religious conflict and ethnic conflicts and all of those things that are historical in many respects, because for these communities have been in conflict even before European colonization of those areas. But we are seeing a situation where the climate change is exacerbating conflicts that are basically conflicts that have been disappeared for a century are now resurfacing in an alarming. So we try to create understanding at the policy level, but also at the community level, at civil society level, that look, let us look beyond ethnicity. While we address them, let us look beyond the religious difference, even as we address them, but let us now look at the underlying factor, around this climate change. How do we address climate change within, in solving the problem of violent conflicts?
So you're promoting education and dialogue and.
Yes. So we are one of the area in the north. The main area where we work is in the northeast, where which is the area where the Boko Haram insurgency is located. We are working in the northeast to promote that kind of dialogue between communities and civil society organizations, academics, and government. We're creating spaces for interaction. Until we started working in the northeast, those spaces didn't exist. If you in the city of Maiduguri, which is the capital of Borno State in the northeast, is the major city in the northeast, we had local NGOs, we had communities that are, including over 1 million people who are displaced in the city of Maiduguri alone. And we had all of those communities academics in the University of Maiduguri know that there's climate change. We have government agencies that are responsible for dealing with ecological situations in the area. Where there was no communication with civil society groups about all this. So we created fora for that kind of intersectoral dialogue. And there's more understanding about how climate change contributes to exacerbating not just ecological change, but also the conflicts. So that's one step. We're building partnerships with government agencies for work in the future to promote more adaptation. Now there's something that for us, underlying